prosperous farmer named Okoro. His barn was overflowing with yams, and his sheds were filled with farm animals. Okoro was a respected young man in the village, known for his kindness and generosity. He later got married to Adaku, who was as kind and gentle as him, and they both lived happily in their small hut. Not more than 1 year into their marriage, Adaku became pregnant. Everyone and every living thing in Okoro's compound was happy and eagerly anticipated the day Adaku will give birth. Adaku was the happiest. She would always carry her protruded tummy with smiles all the time, hoping on the day she would see and touch her baby. Not long. It was time for Adaku to give birth. She went into labor in the middle of the night. It was a worrisome scenario, as there was heavy downpour that night. It rained heavily, and there were multiple thunderstorms in the sky. Regardless, Okoro hurriedly rushed out to get the local midwife who came to assist her in giving birth that night. Little did Okoro know that the heavy downpour was an impending tragedy about to befall him. The baby made it, but her mother was nowhere to be found. Okoro was devastated and heartbroken. He cried and mourned the loss of his precious wife for months. But after a while, he decided he had to find a new mother for his young child. He married Akunna, a woman from a neighboring village, to care for Ezinma. Akunna, however, was not as loving as Okoro had hoped. Akunna initially treated Ezinma with fake love and kindness, but as soon as she gave birth to her first child, Olamma, years later she changed. She began to mistreat Ezinma, giving her extra chores and starving her. She would always force Ezinma to work under the scorching sun, fetching water from the river and tending to the farm animals, while her own daughter relaxed and did nothing all day. Ezinma would cook, but her grown-up daughter can't even pick a broom from the floor. She would go to the market and buy expensive clothes for her daughter, but won't buy for Ezinma. She would instead throw the old and worn-out clothes her daughter has worn on Ezinma and ask her to wear them even if it's torn. Despite her hardships, Ezinma has remained a sweet and loving girl. She would often go and sing by the riverside, pouring out her heart to the waters whenever ever her stepmother's maltreatment becomes unbearable. One day, while Ezinma was singing, a young man named Chike from a neighboring kingdom happened to be passing by. Enchanted by her voice, he stopped to listen, hiding behind a tree. He was so pleased and carried away by the melodious tone of Ezinma's voice that he forgot what he came to the village to do. For several days, he returned to the riverside, hoping to see Ezinma again, but it was all futile and he didn't even know where to start searching for her. Eventually, when he was about giving up, he concluded within him that this was the last day he would come visit the riverside in search of her. Ezinma showed up with her pot of water well balanced on her head. She walked down the riverside to fetch water. He couldn't contain his joy as he rushed out to meet Ezinma. Arinze was smitten by her lovely and kind voice that he fell in love with her. They chatted and talked for long, and from there something called love blossomed. Oftentimes they would meet by the riverside. Ezinma couldn't resist his charms and physique too, and he was the first real friend she has had since childhood. Their love for each other only grew. Meanwhile, Akunna's daughter, Olamma, was extremely beautiful, but grew up as a spoiled girl with a sense of entitlement, believing she was destined for greatness. The village boys were tripping over her, but she has so much pride that she doesn't even give them a listening ear. Soon her name started trending in the village as the spoiled daughter of Okoro. She rejected numerous suitors, claiming they are too poor to marry her, or she would only marry a prince. Her beauty and pride went hand in hand, and she often boasted about her looks, much to the dismay of the villagers. Months passed, and Ezinma's meetings with Chike became more frequent. One day, he arrived at Okoro's compound, dressed in his royal attire, and asked for Ezinma's hand in marriage. Ezinma was surprised and shocked that who she has been meeting all this while, thinking he is just a poor farmer, is actually a prince of their neighboring village. Okoro, overjoyed, accepted the proposal, and the two were married in a grand ceremony. The traditional marriage was the talk of the village. Everyone gathered, married and ate to their satisfaction. It was one of a kind, the greatest marriage ever in their community. Olamma, fueled by jealousy and anger, only solidified her stance that she would only marry a prince, just like her sister. She believed her beauty surpassed Ezinma's, and she deserved nothing less than royalty. Little did she know, a mischievous spirit man, Ntako, had been watching her from the spirit realm. He borrowed different parts he was missing from his spirit friends and disguised himself as a prince and came to marry Olamma. A drunkard who saw them as they were coming to marry Olamma noticed they weren't humans and rushed to tell Okoro. Okoro told his daughter that they should wait and verify the village this man Ntako is claiming to be from, because he has not heard of the village he is talking about before. But Olamma refused vehemently and maintained she must marry Ntako. She shouted and yelled at her father that she married off her first daughter to a prince, but he doesn't want to let her marry a prince too. Her father has no choice but to succumb to her request. Ntako married Olamma and took her to the spirit land as his bride. They traveled through several forests and rivers, and Olamma was exhausted from the long journey and beginning to worry, as it seems they would never arrive to his so-called village. She would often ask Ntako when they are arriving his village, and he would only smile and assure her that they are getting closer. As they crossed the border between humans and spirits, it was getting late. He suddenly turned to Olamma, grabbing her forcefully by the hand. He too took her to a cage and locked her in a mystical palace, mocking her for her vanity. You wanted to marry a prince? Now you're mine. You will never leave here alive, ha 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 ha, he cackled. Olamma was scared to death as she began to cry, wishing she had listened to her father and not blinded by jealousy. He returned different parts he collected from his spirit friends and became a scary ghost entirely. Back in the village, Okoro was frantic with worry. 7 days has passed, yet no words from the people of Ntako, just as he promised to send a messenger once they arrived to their village. After waiting for some days more, he consulted the chief priest to see where Olamma is staying. As the chief priest performed his incantation and the image of Olamma appeared in his calabash, in a state of panic and fear he shouted, Alu! He heaved a deep sigh and said to Okoro, Your daughter is held hostage in the land of the spirits. She married a spirit. Upon hearing this news, Okoro was shocked. He was heartbroken, and at that moment he regretted ever listening to his daughter. The chief priest advised him on what to do to save his daughter. After much discussion and deliberations, Okoro agreed to give it a try, even though the chief priest told him it might not be a success. Just as the chief priest had suggested, he issued a decree. Whoever finds and brings back Olamma alive from the spirit land would marry her and inherit half of his property. The news of Okoro's missing daughter spread through the village. Many brave warriors embarked on the perilous journey to the spirit land, but few didn't return. Few returned but without Olamma. Finally, a strong and poor warrior named Ikemba accepted the challenge. Armed with determination and guided by courage and his late father's spirit, Ikemba embarked on the treacherous quest to rescue Olamma. His journey was fraught with dangers and challenges, from battling fierce beasts in enchanted forests to navigating treacherous rivers guarded by spirits. Along the way, Ikemba encountered wise elders who imparted invaluable knowledge and magical artifacts that aided him in his quest. He traversed the treacherous paths, outsmarted Ntoka's minions. Finally, he reached the heart of Ntoka domain. The air was thick with malevolence as he confronted the spirit in a fierce battle of strength and wit. With skill and bravery, Ikemba overcame Ntoka's illusions and traps, liberating Olamma from her captivity and bringing her back to her father's house. Upon their return to the village, Okoro was overjoyed to be reunited with his daughter. As promised, he gave Ikemba Olamma hand in marriage, along with half of his property. The villagers celebrated her return and union, but many still couldn't believe the beautiful and proud Olamma would agree to marry a poor orphan. Olamma learned a valuable lesson about humility and the dangers of pride. From that day forward, the village prospered even more, thanks to the bravery of Ikemba and the wisdom of Okoro. And Ezinma, the first wife's daughter, sang with joy, knowing her sister was safe and happy at last.